Happy Wednesday, everyone. Beautiful day out there today. We're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to rant about a bunch of different things, but mostly about an article I came across regarding retail crowd swooping in to pick up the CME's micro gold contract. I don't have to tell you, if you like precious metals, gold is flirting with all-time highs again. Silver is looking great, over $30 right now. So there's lots of happy campers in the world right now regarding that. But also, we can't miss the fact that today, the biggest news for today, likely, arguably, is going to be the Fed watch, kind of, see what is coming down the pipeline. Lots of discussion and concern over that, whether it's going to be like, it seems like it's a guaranteed that there's going to be a 25 basis point. I'll say, listen, like anything could happen, but there's also a big desire, a crowd for a 50 basis point. And right as of yesterday, according to the CME's FedWatch tool, it was a 65% chance of a 50 and a 35% odds of a 25. Now, two of right up there is my favorite kind of commentators, people that have been in the business and finance, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan and Ray Dalio from Bridgewater hedge fund that he created. He's now no longer with, but he's retired. Both great philosophical thinkers. They're very well in tuned, obviously, with the markets. They're thinking it's 25. They think it's going to be not earth shattering. So they have it flipped around. I think that they would say it's even more so like a 70 to 85% chance of a 25. And I mean, I have got a bias because I like them, so I tend to think that's the same. I think to go too aggressive, sends wrong message on a lot of fronts. Politically, it seems like you're trying to do one camp or another a favor. It seems like you also, by going too aggressive, that you're acknowledging you've made a mistake, which no one likes to do. These are very big ego people. And I think it's just a safer bet. That will probably, we see a lot of commentators on CNBC and Bloomberg saying there's probably disappointment baked into the cake right now anyway, because yesterday the markets did very well and there was lots of exuberance over a 50. So if it's already baked in there, a 50, people are setting themselves up for a bit of disappointment. But I think, once again, that's if you're a trader. We're not really traders. We're long-term thinkers and buyers of themes, like thematic, ideas, and of course, completely biased on mining. Before we get into some of the nitty-gritty about some of the products, some of the companies that one could go look at, let me just touch on one other thing. Was at an event last night, the Save Canadian Mining event here in Vancouver. It was great, very well attended. It was a BC PC, or Progressive Conservative Party event, which was great because there was full acknowledgement from each candidate there, whether it was Paul Lambert, Brent Chapman, or John Rustad, who potentially could be the next premier here of BC, of the need for mining. It was very clear, and their understanding was very clear that there's been nothing but obstacles here in BC from the government for about 10 years regarding it. And we are very generally a friendly mining zone area, but that it's been getting increasingly more difficult. This kind of mix up between wanting green solutions, but not wanting to have to actually do any of the mining in order to get it. So that acknowledgement was great to hear. Once again, we're biased. We want mining to go ahead. But my messaging to everyone is always, like, you want mining to go ahead, because if you're left wing and that's which is great. I mean, I've no kind of take either way right now. Then you just need to know that why you need it. And that's been our message to everyone as well, is that if you want any of your green solutions, when you break it down, it has to come from mining. And that's all of your energy is coming either from your oil and gas or your coal or mining in some kind of way. And people have to really get that together. So even when you say, well, it's renewable, but you still, if it's hydro, you still have to build the dam. Like, the amount of cement that goes into a hydro and then damming off waters is enough of a controversy in BC. We've talked about it before. Don't have to belabor it, but we want to see Canada have economic success. And I think no one could argue that we've had success in the last decade, as far as financially or economically. And the fact that the Conservative Party is even not only in the running, but they're arguably in the lead is shocking. This is as far left as you can get in Canada, arguably. So it just shows that idea that people will argue about petty social types of things, like I want to be able to use whatever washroom I want. These are Western, problems. They're not real problems. But whenever you take that, my cost of living, I can't get rent because it's way out of reach. I can't pay for food because it's jumped up 20, 25%. When the cost of everything skyrockets, people become very much more fiscally aware. And the urgency of just fundamental issues become more glaringly obvious rather than I could call them very superficial. And I know a lot of people will be upset because they think it's very important. But essentially, there's a reaction from anyone that, wait a second, not only do I not have a livelihood, there isn't a big plan for jobs. There's not a big plan for this. And, I think the writing's on the wall for most of Canada is acknowledging that there's problems. But I wanted to kind of remind people there's also huge solutions. And there's lots of things that can be done pretty quickly in order to turn things around. So there's a lot of hope out there for Canada. And luckily, with us being a resource-rich country, and also with that strong realization of wanting clean air, wanting clean water, wanting to do things environmentally correctly, and equality, wanting to treat people fairly, it leaves us in arguably the strongest role of being an energy leader. And that message needs to come right from the top, right across government, and get people on side and encourage them to want to be part of that story. And to educate them as to, there's risks. Of course, there's risks in all energy, but that the upside far outweighs any risk, and that there is a way that it can be win-win for everyone down the line. So that's some good news. It was a great event, well attended, lots of great people there. A little bit of the down kind of news is, these rate cuts, that's coming, whether it's 25 or 50. Arguably, it's coming because they've got a control of inflation now, and I would say that yes, they've managed it to keep it at a good, stable level right now. But of course, as we've learned, a couple of weeks back, the jobs report was completely off, not in the same realm of reality that they had hoped, or they had been kind of pitching and promoting throughout the whole year. And that's caused some issues as well. And this is not just Canada, because this is the argument from that side as well. Yeah, okay, we're admitting that maybe the economy isn't as great as we thought, but in comparison to XYZ, we're doing better. And that always annoys me, because it doesn't matter if I'm doing poorly and you're doing poorly, but I'm not doing as bad as you. I don't, that's such a negative way of thinking. That's not how a winner thinks. A winner thinks that, no, I'm doing well and I want you to do well. And that's the way we should be looking at this. It's like, I want my neighbor to be doing well and I want to do well as well, because that generally means we're all pretty happy. And that's the way I kind of look at, China right now. It's on the brink of recession since 2008. They've had their vacancies in commercial property, lots of commercial real estate issues in all of North America as well. But they had their significant issues with Evergreen and whatnot, lots of bailouts. And they're seeing lots of vacancies in places like Shanghai, Shenzhen, as people, want to keep to remote work ever since the lockdowns. Youth employment has surged there as well, which we've seen here in Canada and in the US. And there's lots of issues on their government's handling of things. That's a bit more expected. I mean, it is the Chinese Communist Party. So that I don't put a lot of credence in, because you don't expect a lot of great things anyway, nor should you, from that type of government. But so that's kind of the negatives. But it brings up a good question. I want people's feedback on this, is that everyone kind of points to manufacturing and infrastructure and growth and the use of metals, and they go, oh, it's China. Well, if we're doing a transition, like the trillions that are required to build the infrastructure, just to say US, is enormous. The amount of concrete, steel, metals, copper, all that stuff. Why aren't people saying, the U.S. needs to be buying a ton of this stuff. I mean, they are. There's an acknowledgement that they should be, but it isn't a big story. It's like, oh no, just China's growing, China's developing, China's growing. It's like, no, what can't you? North America needs to update its infrastructure if they have any dreams of becoming electric, of shifting to some type of renewable strategy, and that's not the conversation. The conversation tends to hover around like a battery or gigafactory and chips, and that's it. And anyone who's been into the U.S. knows that it needs a ton of infrastructure. Like it needs a lot. I mean, just from roads to you name it. It needs to update the grid, and that cost is huge. But just, I'd love to hear your thoughts as to why we're not hearing enough about that. I mean, that would be a get back to work program that would be absolutely incredible for Canada, for the U.S. If you went back to people and said, listen, we don't need as many influencers. I put myself in that category. We may not need as many social media, people that go to school and take PR. We may not need that, but we know what we need. We need electricians, because we need to update this grid. We're going to need a lot of engineering. We're going to need welders. These people make a lot of money. It's an excellent life. And that's even just starting out. You make a lot of money. But listen, I don't want to get caught too much on my ranting about why that kind of messaging would be outstanding to help build out all this infrastructure, give young people an avenue to go, listen, I can do a 2-year course to become an electrician. You're going to work forever. Like if you get your ticket to work as an electrician, it's, and you can build your own company and business. There's so much upside there from then turning around going, I'm going to just go get a degree in something and hopefully get a job. That messaging coming piped down the line and getting people motivated and encouraged to do that would be outstanding. And you could tie that into mining. You could tie it into everything and then go, we've got a huge vision for Canada for 10 years to be an energy provider and an energy giant. And we could do it. It's not unrealistic. It absolutely could. It's set up to do. It just we need the right people to make that happen. And I'd rather focus on that message, that upside potential of what could be, rather than kind of where we're at right now. Because sometimes, you realize where you're at, but you go, we could turn this around. And for sure, we have enough brain power, enough intelligence. I mean, just in Waterloo alone, there's so much brain power and talent that we could drive this economy forward if we were just given the ability and the desire to do so. So there's my kind of rant on the positive side. Then on the big question mark, before we get into some of these products, the CME and Sprott and whatnot, DME, which you haven't heard me talk about for a long time. I'm still a fan, although I've got mixed feelings about it. It hurt a lot what happened there. You can look back at old videos to that. In our newsletter, we've got lots of comments on DME, but they put out a news release just the other day. Stock reacted quite well. Plus side, they achieved commercial helium production. They're generating revenue with their processing plant. Their revenue for the year will be covering all G&A, which is a pretty good number. Now, they haven't said what that number is, but it's pretty easy to figure out because you can go and see what their G&A is in their filings. And they're pretty close to fully autonomous operation. Negatives, they're saying, well, in their end of year 2023, none of this revenue is going to be shown, so they won't be able to see it. But Q1, we should see it. Slow ramp up. Hey, listen, a slow ramp up is better than no ramp up at this point. So let's keep our eyes on that. And they've got ongoing court cases that should be resolved in the near term, one would hope. But we're getting there. I'm hoping, I'm always cautious to say this, hoping to get an interview with them. I've been trying for over a year and a half to get something up and out. It could happen, but fingers crossed. But I wanted to get it out there because it's a company that we've really put a lot of our heart and soul into, and it rode up, it rode back down, and they went kind of quiet. And we're hoping to get them talking a bit more here again and see what's happening. But beyond that, let's jump into some of these this article about the CME in particular. And before I go into too much detail, let me just say any of the companies I mentioned, I don't have any relationship with. I don't have any sponsorship. I don't get paid for. There's no button below to link you to go purchase ETFs and I get a cut. None of that. This is just my bias of being if you're interested in getting in the market, there's a couple different ways. There's lots of bullion dealers, and here are some very reputable places you could go for ETFs that have been around for a long time. Great name, and you can do the research from there. Wonderful websites. Of course, the CME being one of them, Sprott being a very obvious one, and loads of products, loads of ETFs, loads of products. So even if you think, well, Andrew, I like what you're saying about mining, and I like some of the juniors. I don't know how to begin, to understand. It's going to take me a while, but I think that yes, juniors might be coming back. Guess what? You could go buy a junior ETF from Sprott. And I wanted to bring that in because once again, my bias is I want to get people excited about what can happen. There's huge asymmetric gains that can be had by just looking at the mining sector to provide all these critical metals. And once again, it doesn't matter what happens here in Canada or in the US, October, November, with different events occurring. I can't say certain words, otherwise the video gets flagged. Both sides of the aisle fully understand critical metals. They get it. Even here, the Liberal government fully understands. They put out their critical metals list. They are behind it. They're not behind the actual mining part. They're not really supportive, or I'd say they should be a lot more supportive. On that note, I see that the Germans just set up $1 billion fund themselves, the German government, for critical metals to support their efforts to get critical metals. Why isn't there a Canadian $10 billion one? We certainly have the pension fund come in and at least participate in some way, not even meaningful, but in any way to support the country and its natural resources. Lots of things that we could do to get this market going, and that we feel like we're really part of the solution. Not just, hey, maybe I ride my bike to work and I don't use plastic. Right? Those are nice gestures. They don't have any impact, but they maybe have a good feeling that you feel like you're part of something. But an actual meaningful financial approach to actually solving an issue would be something we could all be proud about. It would be something we could all come together over, because right or left, these terms are becoming kind of meaningless now. They all want that same thing. They're open to it. They are, and it sounds like sometimes when you read some news, they aren't, but they are. Let's jump into something here before I go on, because I wanted to talk about some, just remind people some of the risks before we talk about that are out there. It was a Jamie Dimon, video kind of summing up what's going on right now. And this is kind of why we're seeing gold and silver doing so well. But let's pull this up here. I mean, like I said before, he's one of my favorites. I like to listen to him and get his perspective. So, and this is someone who's a Democrat. I think there was rumors that Trump might try to get him involved in the government. I think at one point, Barack Obama's team tried to get him involved. I don't know if he really wants to, but it just shows you, once again, across the aisles, a lot of respect for this guy. And he's very sober in his thinking, and he tries not to be on the fringes of any kind of politics. And that's refreshing. So let's just take a quick listen.
Important thing that dwarfs all other things, that's really important, far more important today than it's been probably since 1945, is this war in Ukraine, what's going on in Israel and the Middle East, America's relation with China, and the attack fundamentally on the rule of law that was set up after World War II. You haven't seen this. It's serious. There have been almost 1 million casualties now in the Russian-Ukraine war. The numbers I read were that something like 20,000 Ukrainian kids have been kidnapped and sent to Russia. It's on the border of Europe. It's threat of nuclear blackmail. Iran, North Korea, and Russia, I think you can legitimately call an evil axis, are working every day in how to make it worse for the Western world and for America. And of course, China, I wouldn't put them in the evil axis, but it puts them on the wrong side, at least as far as I'm concerned and the Western world is concerned. This may affect the free and democratic world for the next 100 years. And I think that's the most important thing. I think people overly focus on, we're going to have a soft landing, hard landing. Honestly, most of us have been through all that stuff. It doesn't matter as much. I mean, you don't want people to get hurt. And this whole thing I talk about geopolitics may very well affect the economy. It may not. So you can study, global conflicts. Very few do. Obviously, World War I and World War II did, but Korea, Vietnam, barely in the short run. Yom Kippur war did, because it would happen to oil supply. This is all of that: food, migration, oil supply, and it's getting worse all the time. I mean, you saw Iran shipping ballistic missiles to Russia. You see the Houthis sending a ballistic missile or some kind of missile into Tel Aviv. It's ratcheting up, folks. And it takes really strong American leadership and Western world leadership to do something about it. That's my number one concern.
Okay, we'll pause there. Very good context. I won't get into where I disagree with them. I agree with most of that. I mean, we are, and I think everyone would admit, very chaotic times and very tense times. My argument, there's other, I would put the threat factor of China being far greater than Russia. I'm going to write a little bit of a piece. It'll be for our subscribers, my thoughts on all of that and whatnot. But I'd like to keep a lot of the politics things off the live streams. But it's interesting because he's written before, about 5-6 years ago, about how politics doesn't really affect the markets. And I was taken aback because I thought, well, it doesn't in general times when you don't have extremes. No. I mean, if you go a little bit to the left of center, if you go a little bit to the right of center, back and forth, soft landings, hard landings, cycles, no, not really a big deal. A little bit more tax, a little bit less tax. These things are pretty minute, but not when you have fundamental extreme changes, which is going on in the West and shifting from wanting to ignore the Constitution, say in the US. And let's start with something else. These are open discussions that are very unsettling on their own. Never mind that we're dealing with all sorts of other issues. And my argument would be the US has been weak for the last 4 years. The world knows it. They know that they're weak, that they can't respond, and that they are going through change. I would argue have been at a soft war for years already. Once again, you can refer to my writing that I'll have in there. Most people don't realize that we've been at war, but we have been. And I think he's kind of saying that that's happened and it's escalating and escalating. And we need to have the U.S. needs to have a strong leader, very strong. And whether it doesn't matter if you like him or not. Like I know that this is going to be a very contested election, but we need to have strong leaders now. We can't have softness anymore and whatnot, because the world is fighting. Once they see weakness, they start fighting for power. And also at the same time, we could be stopping some wars right now easily. Believe me, I'd be the first one to say, if Russia attempted to invade Poland or threatened to come across another border, I would be on the side of, okay, boom, let's go. Let's fight. But that's not happening. It's not even being said. It's not even being something that they've brought up. So that a lot out of the way is very interesting to see Jamie Dimon reflect on that and showing that how tense a situation we are. And we're also trying to change over all of these things. We're doing an energy transition. We've got the world, like it's so much. And it can be overwhelming and it can seem, like this is very stressful. But if we try to focus on, once again, not those negatives, but where can we go? How can we get there? Who's giving us those solutions and step by step? Like that's where we need to be focusing our things, just as we would in our day-to-day lives. If you focus on all the struggles you have as soon as you wake up in the morning, and this is bad, it's this, it's that, it's negative, chances are you're going to have a negative day. But if you can get your head wrapped and go, no, I've got a lot of work I have to do. There's a lot of things I have to accomplish by the end of the day. And if I can get those done, it's a win. Enough of those on that side of the win chart, your life is going to get a lot better. If we get caught up in reading a lot of negative news, hearing a lot of negative news, chatting with people that have negative, it's just going to be negative. And I don't mean put your, mind in the sky and just kind of live off in, unicorns and bunnies and stuff. But you can put yourself in a mindset where you think, yes, there's a potential way out of this and we can get there. And let's talk about these solutions. That's what we always kind of wanted. Look at Sprott, look at this CME article. I mean, they've got everything. You can go buy junior miners, like gold miners, junior uranium exploration, you name it. If you don't like to look at individual companies, and you feel like it's a bit much of a lurch for me, I don't want to go pick individual stocks. They do it for you. They've got like bundles in ETF, and it's a way you can say, I can get exposure now, or at least I can go talk to my broker or my financial advisor and say, hey, what do you think of Sprott? What do you think of their uranium trust? What do you think of Sprott and their silver, their gold, whatever it happens to be? They're going to know exactly who Sprott is, even though if they don't know the products, and it can start a great conversation with them and ask them their advice and say, hey, do you think we're doing this transition? Do you think we're doing all these things? I mean, these are conversations that we need to be having. And should I have exposure to these? And I wanted to put up a couple of these just to remind people that we like certain stocks, we like certain companies, but I get to spend all day talking to people. And I mean, I have a relationship with Red Cloud where I'll be at the Red Cloud event in October, and I get to talk to CEOs and presidents of companies all the time, and I get to interview them. So I get them to teach me and to tell me what's happening. But most people don't get that. They've got lives and jobs and families and everything else to worry about and to do. That sometimes, even if they see a video from me and they go, "Hey, Andrew, we love Power Nickel as well. I picked some up." Like 2 weeks later, they might look and go, "I can't remember why I bought this," and rightfully so. That's why we try to keep in contact with people all the time and to remind them that, hey, this is what they're up there. This is what they're doing. These are important things that the messaging we want to get across to people. And Sprott is one where you can just go in and go, hey, here's the energy transition ETF. Oh, okay. What's the chart look like? What's this look like? Oh, maybe if I just put a little bit into that, then you feel like you've taken action and you've become part of a solution towards making cleaner air, doing this transition. And that alone is taking the biggest step. Even if it's $200, you're now part of it. And that's kind of our intention right from the very start, was not spending as much time trying to go after sovereign wealth funds. And believe me, I went to a private school. I know lots of people with tons of money, lots of family offices. We'd have discussions with all sorts of people, but it was more to try to get just mom and dad, like, Main Street to Wall Street type idea that, I'm from Merrill Lynch. That was their motto, was try to get the average Canadian to go, I could throw a couple bucks at this and there's asymmetric gains. So maybe there's a big win for me. Maybe, once again, it's speculative. But not only that, is I'm putting my money not towards paying tax to a carbon tax so that the government make decisions for me, but I'm taking some money, putting it aside with a potential upside where I can look at it the same way. Like, don't make me pay a carbon tax to the government, but I'll take that same money and I'll throw it into XYZ ETF. Boom. You've done more now by doing that than handing over anything in a carbon tax. And that's not just arguably, that's just legitimately that would do more than handing it over to a government. Anyways, that's my rant. Tell me what your thoughts are. Would you like to see more government and more taxes so that they decide, that they'll build out a Volkswagen, plant for $12 billion and hand over that to a publicly traded company so that they can sell us batteries? Or would you rather go, hey, if we put that into the Canadian economy and try to encourage, a bunch of bright engineers in Waterloo to come up with a battery and funded that, could Canadians actually build that? I think they could. We're pretty smart. We got lots of brain power here, and we got lots of resources. So why aren't we looking to our own people, our own country, recent immigrants, lots of brain power here? Like, we could. And that would also light a fire under people to go, hey, there's a big opportunity in Canada. There's a big future ahead. And that's something I think we could all get excited about. Anyways, that's my Wednesday done. Hope you have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you on Friday.